This is the Picturing Success podcast with Rick Salmon and Larry Becker, where we talk to the best photographers on the planet. We ask them things like how they got started, what's behind their creativity. We talk to them about business. Do they have career insights? And we dig deep and talk about all kinds of things that you want to know from the best photographers in the world. And now, here's Rick Salmon and Larry Becker.
It's just awesome. Hey, Rick Salmon here. Thank you so much for joining me for the first ever video episode of the Picturing Success podcast. Now, joining me today is my good friend, really a nice guy, great guitar player, world famous photographer, Frank Doorhof. Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fine. But that great guitar playing, still have to practice it.
Show the audience your fingers.
Yeah, well...
We were playing at Photoshop. We were playing at Photoshop World, and your fingers actually started bleeding. But before we get going, we have to thank Larry Becker. You know, Larry came up with the idea for the podcast. Yep. So Larry's down in Florida. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, and it's much nicer here, to be honest.
Well, yeah, June in Florida is not nice. At Photoshop World, where you were teaching, where I was teaching, I couldn't go out in the morning. It was just so hot, so humid, right?
Yeah, you couldn't go out in the morning. I couldn't go out at all. I'm Dutch. I'm wearing shorts. Everybody always thinks that I'm always wearing shorts, but that's because they see me in America.
Can you pan down? No, we're all kidding.
No, don't.
Frank is actually too sexy for shorts. Okay, we're going to get going here. This is going to be kind of fun. I asked Frank to send me 7 of his favorite people pictures, and I have 7 of my favorite people pictures. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say something nice about Frank's pictures, and hopefully Frank is going to say something nice about my pictures. Then I'm going to explain a little bit more about it. So Frank, let's start with this awesome picture that you have of this great model with the red hair in this, looks like a cockpit. And I love this equilibrium effect. You call it the
Dutch angle.
Dutch angle, okay, and you speak Dutch, right? So what I like about this also is your lighting. You're a master of lighting. So tell the audience a little bit about that picture.
It's actually pretty funny because do you recognize the model?
Yes.
It's Nadine.
Yes.
And Nadine we always call like the girl with the 1,000 faces. So I always
that's good.
I always love to work with models that actually bring something new.
Right.
Every time they're different. Mm-hmm. And this was actually shot during a workshop. And we were doing the workshop in Aviodrome in the Netherlands. And this is a flight simulator. And officially you can't shoot inside the flight simulator because they didn't want to allow it.
Right.
But we just asked, and you know, when mommy says no, you go to daddy, and you says that mommy says ask daddy. Yeah, so that's how we got into the cockpit.
Or just do it in big, forget us after.
That way. And the lighting actually is pretty interesting because we couldn't fit any strobes because those cockpits are really, really small. So what we did is we actually used a Lume Cube. That's a little LED light.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it on a selfie stick and just held it like that and took the shot. Cool. And that way you can angle your light any way you want it, and everything else is just the ambient light that was already there.
Well, you know, one of my favorite expressions is light illuminates, shadows define.
Without a doubt.
And those shadows here really add to the mood of the picture. And I think when it comes to a picture, we could talk technical all the time, 2-to-1 ratio lighting, butterfly lighting. We could talk about all of that, but it's the mood, it's the feeling that I think is the most important. Now, look at this. Your images that you're showing here today are very, you're creating these fantasies, which I love.
A little bit surreal.
A little surreal. My pictures are a little more realistic. So I think this is going to be kind of fun for the audience. So I love the background here. The background can make or break the shot.
Without any doubt. And there's one train of thought and there's another train of thought. And what I normally tell people is you have 2 kinds of backdrops.
Right.
You have the backdrop and you have the background. Now, what is the difference? When you look at the gray seamless, for example, that's a backdrop.
Right.
You just place something behind your model because there has to be something.
Right.
Now, there's also a background where actually the model, it's not really competing, but it's more like it's an interesting background. And I always make that connection. Now, this was actually shot on a trade show called Professional Imaging in the Netherlands.
Cool.
And really, I can't remember taking this shot because I was really sick. No, I was really sick. And the thing is that this was set up by all the assistants we had at that point. They knew my lighting, and I did change it a little bit to make it my personal style. But what we used is actually these backdrops are just wooden plates that we painted, and we used a little bit of smoke.
Cool.
And everything else is just the styling, and it's just pressing the shutter at the right moment. And then you get the smoke in, you get the lighting in, and I absolutely loved the shot. The cool thing was when I got home and I saw the shot, I was just going like, Did I shoot that?
So you're telling me I could go there and just press the shutter, I got the shot?
Not really, of course, but it's... the cool thing is when you collect people around you that can help you out.
Yeah.
Like at that point, I was so sick and I got so much medication in that I could concentrate on what I did and teach, but I couldn't really concentrate on the shot. So everything was a little bit like a blur. And I think a lot of photographers forget that the people that you work with are incredibly important. Of course, it's my shot, it's my idea together with Nadine, but they help out with setting the light. The thing is, and you just said shadows divine.
Right.
A lot of people are afraid of those shadows. I always tell people, everybody can shoot with a big softbox.
Right.
Now start channeling that light and then you become a master of light. So what I start my photography workshops with is always like, a lot of photographers are controlled by their lighting.
Right.
While actually a photographer should be in control of his lighting.
Absolutely.
And that's what you see here. Like, although I was very sick, you can still set it up. But you couldn't set it up without your assistants, because they know where the smoke has to be, and you don't have to think about it.
Now, I like that picture because the model like kind of blends into the background.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times photographers use separation lights to separate the subject from the background, but I'm going to show two pictures where the subject falls into the background. So it's very...
And that's what I like.
It's very subjective. Okay, how much fun is this? Now, this is outdoors, and you're definitely using a flash or some kind of lighting system, but... I know that, but the average person looking at this wouldn't know that because you have balanced the light from the flash to the available light, so it doesn't really look like a flash picture, which I think that's what I love about that shot.
The cool thing, this was shot during a workshop in the UK, and I had two models with me, and Nadine actually saw this area and she was going like, this is amazing. And at that point, we both said, this is amazing. And this is actually the junk place of a company that creates these for kiddie playgrounds. So we asked, can we work here? Can we make a shot? And they were just going like, why do you want to make a shot?
Right.
Now, the cool thing is, if you just move the camera like a few inches that way, you could have seen all the people sitting there in stools going like, what are they doing there?
Right.
Now, the thing that defines this image for me is actually this way, that it's upside down.
I love that.
If that would be gone, it's because I do like to make surreal images, but the most important thing for me is a story.
Right.
I don't like just images. That's why I won't shoot like the Playboy stuff or whatever.
Right.
It's for me, it's always that combination of talking about something, but also showing it in a picture. And a still frame can tell a picture, can tell a story.
Absolutely. I love this. I love the smoke in the back and the way that you have a light behind the strobe or the light, whatever it is, too. That's what you have to do if you're using a smoke machine. If you have the light at the front of the smoke, you're not going to see it.
No.
So let's talk about this.
Well, think about riding a car. If you ride a car in the fog, you will actually turn on your headlights and it will be totally white.
Right.
So that will happen also with smoke. So what you see in this shot is that we actually side light everything. Now, the thing is with this, we use two wooden frames, and we normally put them in a corner like this.
Yep.
But in this case, I just put them in a corner like this. So we leave a little bit of a gap in the back and put a strobe there. Now, everything else you see, like the chandelier and those little lights, are all there. It's not photoshopped. So what I did is used a very long shutter speed, and the back is actually strobing on the lowest setting.
When you say how long?
This will probably be a fourth of a second on ISO maybe 400 or 800. I don't remember.
Love it. Love it. Oh man, I love this. Again, the smoke machine. I love the colors. I love the way you work with colors. You have the red dress here, the red background. I think a lot of people don't realize that I noticed it first, right? The first thing that people notice when they look at a picture is actually, or a painting, is the color.
Yeah.
So this is a nice warm color. I think this will look totally different if it were blue or green.
Without any doubt. And that's again that storytelling and mood. Now, we all know painters, right? Before photographers, they were painters.
Right.
Now, one of the painters that inspire me immensely is Caravaggio. And of course, a lot of people know Rembrandt and Van Gogh. But Caravaggio was actually somebody who almost did pictures. But you see some strong red colors. And the coolest thing is that there were two terms that I never heard of before. And that was Caravaggio and chiaroscuro. And at one point, somebody pointed me out. He said, "You're a master of chiaroscuro."
Oh, wow.
And I was just going like, okay.
That's quite a compliment.
What is that? So I had to find out that it actually was the difference between light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And then I looked at my images and I was going like, yeah, that's indeed what I use. And I think that's what I try to do also in the workshops and in these interviews with you. Just educate people that it's so incredibly important to embrace the shadows. The shadows really are the soul of a shot.
They are.
Take them out and you have a flat image.
So actually, when we were there in Holland, in your studio there, Frank has an awesome studio. You do workshops there too, right?
Twice a week.
We'll have the list on our website. But we talked about that. Light illuminates, shadows define. Shadows add a sense of depth and dimension. Shadows are the soul of the picture, and shadows are your friend, right?
Yeah. And if you think you need two strobes, only use one.
Okay, that's one of the tips. That's one of Frank's tips that I'm using here, which is really a good tip. Okay, and the last one, Catwoman.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm totally in love with. Comics, storytelling.
Batman, I know Scott Kelby gave you a little Batman in Photoshop.
Correct. I absolutely love Batman, but also the old horror movies.
Right.
And I think that especially when you look at the black and white ones like Dracula, Frankenstein,
Yep.
Those were the stories that were told the right way. Now it's all about blood and gore, and it's about how fast can you go?
Right.
Where is that tension? And I like to put it in a shot. Like this shot, some people would say it didn't went well because the model wasn't lit. That's exactly the idea. If you shoot something, and we're now walking for next Photoshop World,
right.
We're actually talking about shooting, can I say it? Like a little bit of a Batman and showing that whole progress of making it really nice and intense. So this was actually deliberately done that way.
You said that someone said that it wasn't lit. Well, there's an expression. I forget who said it. I've been looking for it. I know I heard it somewhere. And the expression is, if you destroy the mystery of the photograph, you destroy the photograph. So this picture has a sense of mystery. And actually, this is the last one. This picture has a sense of mystery.
This was shot on a trade show in a very small booth.
Cool.
I think 2 by 2 meters. And this is the thing about it. The model came in. This is not Nadine. This is just we work with a lot of models, but somehow Nadine's work always pops up because it's just so creative. This was actually a really cool fashion model. And at one point I just told her, like, what is the craziest thing you have?
Yeah.
And she said, I have this dress. I said, no. Crazy, not fashion, crazy. Yeah. She said, well, I did a cosplay stuff and I have this Darth Vader mask. I said, bring it. Now, a lot of models won't be wearing a mask for the very simple reason they go like, yeah, but my hair and my eyes.
Yeah.
This model understood that modeling is telling a story.
Right.
You have to do what the photographer needs to do. And it's not about you, it's about a collaboration.
Right.
And this, believe it or not, this is zero Photoshop. We had one strobe on the back, illuminating her from the side. This is actually by pure accident one of the beauty dishes that I angled towards the backdrop. And a lot of people will say like the backdrops on trade shows are reflective. I can't work with that. Don't ever, and if I say it wrong, please cut it out. My expression is don't bitch but switch. Don't say I can't work with this.
Yeah.
Just adjust.
Right.
So in this case, a reflective backdrop, a lot of photographers will go like, I can't work with this. And I was just going like, wow, let's aim the light a little bit towards the background and see what happens. And you get this, it's like she's in a, and this is all lens flares. It's like she's in a starry heaven.
I love it. I also love working with you, Frank, because you talk as fast as I do. I mean, right?
But life is short. Let's talk fast.
Yeah. Okay, so amazing work. If we're going to have a link on the I love your work. You have another one, don't, why fake it when you can create it?
Yeah, why fake it when you can create it?
So Frank, actually I have a lot of Salmonisms and you have a lot of your phrases. Okay, so I'd like to share with you some of my favorite pictures. So Frank is creating these very fanciful images. My pictures are more realistic, so I think this is a good combination.
So I love the shot that you actually show there. I believe it's your dad,
Well,
right?
This is my dad. It's actually the last picture I took of him. He knew. It's kind of sad. He knew it was the last one I was going to take. I knew it was the last one. So it was a little hard to ask him if I could take the picture. So I put this picture online, and he's looking out the window. Just a quick tip here is when you're photographing someone, either have a profile or use the cheek as a background for the nose so the nose isn't like sticking off the edge of the face. I'm seeing eye to eye. I'm shooting eye to eye. So I put this online, and someone says to me, talk about the mood of the story, right? Someone says to me, Rick, you're supposed to be a professional photographer. His hands are bigger than his head. Well, that's because I was shooting with the wide angle.
Yeah.
But the thing to me is when I was a kid, my father would put his arms around me and help me with my homework and his hands.
Yes.
So this is, I've been to 100 countries. This is my favorite portrait.
But if you go back to that shot, his hands are bigger, but I think that's narrow-minded of the guy making the expression because it's about storytelling. What I see is literally a dad, because how do we remember our dad? Being a little kid with those huge hands that caress you and hold you.
Yeah.
So that's the best memory. And I think also, like you said, I knew this was the last shot.
Yeah.
I kid you not. It's the worst thing that can happen because people don't realize how important photography is. We shoot images that are frozen moments in time that never come back again. So when you take a shot, just think about it. You're literally creating something that will never come back again. So take time. Don't shoot a gazillion images.
Right.
Think about that shot and just shoot it the way that this is the last shot I'm going to take of somebody. If you think that constantly, you create the best images ever.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. He didn't get dressed up.
Not.
He has his robe. He has his walker on. So it's, I guess my tip is, work hard on all these professional shots, but definitely photograph the people you love.
And my tip is don't listen to people who are only negative.
Well, there's a lot of, especially people hiding online, a lot of negative folks. Okay, this is one of my favorite pictures that illustrates the point that Frank was saying before. If you think you need 2 lights, use 1 light. If you think you need 2 lights, 3,
use 1.
Use 1 light. So anyway, this is, we talked about the Dutch painters before. Yeah. Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring. This is my friend's daughter. We went to we went to Macy's here, which is a department store. We got the props and everything. And what I was trying to do was learn about shadows and highlights. But also, if you look at the original Girl with the Pearl Earring, you see the catch lights are in the same place in the eyes as in Vermeer's painting. And as we know, eyes are the windows to the soul. And now here, this is what I was going to say before. Here she's fading into the background. We don't have that separation light.
But what is separation? Do you need separation?
You don't always need it. What I say about the rules of composition, I didn't write the rules of composition. Why the heck should I follow them, right?
Yeah. And you know what I love about this shot? And this is what determines a master of lighting or somebody who just tries. You see the jawline?
Yep.
And guys, look this online. See the jawline? It's perfectly defined. I cannot tell you how difficult something like that is, because this is actually where a lot of people use a second stroke to just set a jawline, but you destroy that. And it can be really cool, don't get me wrong, rim lighting is amazing, but you have to be able to also do it without.
Right.
And because you placed your light absolutely perfectly and angled her, you also see the pearl earring.
Yep. Well, that's the whole story.
Yeah.
And this was with the Canon Speedlight in a softbox. And my tip for using a softbox is, an umbrella spreads the light around.
Yeah.
If you're going to get a softbox like we have here, get one with a recessed panel so you can direct and shape and mold the light. So I only use umbrellas if I'm doing like a big group.
I always state to people, umbrellas are for rain.
There you go.
And we have a lot of umbrellas in the Netherlands. Now, just kidding. Umbrellas are great if you want to light up a room. But
it's kind of flat.
Yeah, we want to tell stories with lighting, so that means that we have to aim that lighting somewhere.
Right.
So, yeah, grids are awesome.
Have you been to Carnevale in Venice?
Not yet, but I hear that somebody's going there and maybe
we could do a workshop together.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so stay tuned for that on Frank's site and my site, but this is one of my favorite shots here. So there's a couple of things about this. Again, one strobe light, in a speed light in a softbox, but I wanted to have some of the background light. So the first thing I did is I put my camera on the tripod and I dialed in the right manual exposure setting for the background. Then I took it down a stop because I wanted the subject to stand out. Now I'm shooting, Frank's going to have a heart attack maybe on this first. I'm shooting on ETTL automatic, but Frank uses a light meter. But this is what I say. This is an old light meter that my father, who you just saw, used to use. There's a lot of ways to get different places. There's a joke about Photoshop instructors. How many Photoshop instructors does it take to change a light bulb? 1. And 99 others to show you his or her own technique.
Yeah. I think that one of the most mistakes or misunderstandings is that some people will say, like, if you're using a light meter, you're an old-fashioned guy. Well, trust me, this is my new digital camera. I'm not an old-fashioned guy.
Right.
And other people tell you, if you use a light meter, you're a better photographer. That's also not true. There's only one reason to use a light meter, and that's speed.
So what I like about this is I have the reflection in the mirror, which I worked hard on.
But nothing else.
Nothing else, and I had to sharpen that because the mirror was dirty. And I'm shooting at a low angle. So when you shoot at a low angle, it gives the model a greater sense of power.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. Angle is everything.
So important.
Yeah, I'm a tall guy, so I often shoot down.
Yep.
But I'm so happy with the flip-up screens because now I can shoot from a lower angle.
How good is that? Okay, we're in Myanmar. There's a big difference between taking a picture and making a picture. So we're in the Buddhist temple. They have more than 1,000 Buddhist temples. Some of them are more than 10,000 years old, Frank. So anyway, we're 3 days in the Buddhist temples, no monks, no candles. So I say to the guide, I've seen this in magazines. Can you help me out? He gets on his cell phone and he calls up a local monastery, asks the monk if he could send over 2 monks. And our driver goes, picks up the 2 monks. Here's one of them. And on the way back, picks up some candles at the supermarket. And we made this shot.
I just want to throw away my camera.
So I'm shooting at f/22, okay, because I want that starburst. It's ISO 6400. You've heard me say this tip that if a picture's so boring that you notice the noise, it's a boring picture. And I'm shooting at an angle to try to create a sense of depth. But one thing I like, and I know you do this, and I noticed this in your pictures, and I first heard this from our friend Joe McNally. If you want an interesting portrait, don't light the subject's entire face. So here we have that nice like shadow there, and just the front of his face is illuminated.
I always tell people, look at movies. This is a frame from a movie. And in all honesty, and this is the cool thing, I think a lot of people don't realize if you want those starbursts, you have to go to f/22. They're trying to recreate this on 2.8, will never work.
Right.
But another thing is noise.
Yeah.
I always tell people, noise doesn't exist. We call it grain, and then it gets art. And there's a running gag with me, and everybody who knows me knows this one. If you really mess up a shot, but it's awesome. Make it black and white, add a lot of contrast and noise, and you have instant art.
Yeah.
And the cool thing was that actually what you tell me, it's something that Jay Mizell told me. He says, look at Robert Desaunaux. It's one of the great street photographers. I went to an exposition and I was just looking at his shots and I was just going like, this is so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And then I noticed that everything was out of focus and actually the focus was on the backdrop. And you didn't notice. And why? Because the story is so interesting. Think about a movie. We all have 4K Ultra HD television sets with HDR. So we have this image that's literally jumping off your screen.
Yeah.
If the movie isn't interesting, I'm bored. That's why I bought the old monster movies. They're from the 40s.
Yeah.
They're black and white, but they're so cool.
Yeah, content is king. Here's another shot, one of my favorites. It illustrates you don't always have to be looking at the subject, seeing the subject's face.
It tells way more story.
Right, this tells a story. And this is what I'm into right now, trying to tell stories with my pictures.
Wow.
And we'll end with this. This was taken in China, in remote China. And this illustrates a lot of the different things that we talked about. Lighting the subject's face, watching the background, the story, getting down low. And here I'm exposing for the highlights. I feel, in most cases, if the highlights are overexposed and washed out, I feel as though you missed the shot.
The cool thing about this is exactly what I told you. You have backdrops and backgrounds. Here, the background, is competing with the model, but it's not the model, but in exactly the right way. It fits, and that's cool.
Actually, Frank, he is a model.
Don't tell him.
No, this is a cormorant fisherman, but they fished out, years ago, they fished out all the fish.
Now they earn money with this.
So now they earn money with this. Well, listen, Frank, thank you so much for being on the show. Larry, we miss you, and we'll definitely have you back.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you so
my
very
friend.
much. Awesome.